Hello everyone, and welcome to our special television forum featuring the top water experts in the Asia-Pacific region. We are very happy to have been joined by these distinguished panelists who will share with us their ideas and their comments about this very, very critical issue about water. And why shouldn't we be talking about water? This year is the year of sanitation. We are in the decade of water, and we would like to focus on this very important issue, which is so basic to human life itself. To introduce our guests, let me say hello to Ms. Erna Witolar, Vice Chair, Governing Council of the Asia-Pacific Water Forum. She comes to us from Indonesia. We would also like to say hello to Mr. Yuan Lee, Water Resources and Hydropower Planning and Design, General Institute, Ministry of Water Resources, from the People's Republic of China. And also with us is Mr. Walter Ariens, Lead Water Resources Specialist at the Asian Development Bank. Hello to all of you. And over to my left side, I would like to welcome to the panel Mr. M. Zahir Shah Mahmood from the Ministry of Water and Power, Pakistan. Last, and certainly not the least, is another guest in our panel, who, by the way, will serve as a special resource person, Professor Asit Biswas, Team Leader of the Asia Water and Development Outlook. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Welcome to the program. Sir, will you outline for us just what exactly are the key issues surrounding water resources in the Asia-Pacific region?
Not only for the Asia-Pacific region, but I think for the world as a whole, we can identify a series of key issues which we need to think about the next 20 to 25 years. The first thing we need to realize is, in the past, we have considered that our experience of the past will serve as a solution to the future. One of the things we are now finding out, the world is changing so rapidly that because of these changes, we'll be forced to think about new solutions. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, during the next 20 years, the practices and processes for water management will change more than the past 2,000 years, whether the water profession likes it or not. Unlike in the past, furthermore, these changes will come from outside the profession, to which the water profession will have to react. We'll have very little control or say on these external forces which are going to affect water management. And some of these forces are completely new. We even don't understand how they're going to affect water management. To give you an example, a few examples. Globalization of knowledge, globalization and free trade will rapidly change the water requirements for places like China to India to Japan, whole variety of things. Yet we don't know very much how these are going to affect water sector. Advances in information and communication revolution. It's changing rapidly, but not even a single scientist or a water expert anywhere in the world looking into how they're affecting water management. Similarly, the world is now extremely conscious of energy security. Energy security will have a major impact on water security, and we are not, again, neither in the water sector nor in the energy sector, we are looking into this interrelationship. Same goes with the food security, environmental security. So in the future, not only in the Asia-Pacific region, but the world as a whole, we have to think about the intersectoral relations of all these issues, and the future of Asia and the world will be decided not individually in the water sector, but in the interrelationship between this variety of sectors. That's the first issue. Second issue, I think, even for the Asia-Pacific, is we have to focus on why are we doing water management. In the water profession, we assume water management is an end by itself. That is incorrect. Water management is just a means to an end, and the end is poverty alleviation, income redistribution, environmental conservation. So we need to look much more to the end. What are we trying to achieve? In the countries concerned, because Asia Pacific, it's not a homogeneous region. Countries are different. Even within the country, China, India, big countries like this, different regions are different. The third issue I would like to raise is contrary to the current belief. I do not believe water scarcity is a problem. Yes, it could be a problem for few small parts or few small regions, but in principle, we have enough water. And internationally and regionally, some of the parameters we are using for water scarcity do not make any sense, any scientific sense. Even a school kid, if they start thinking from first principle, will say, we should tell the water profession, you guys are completely off the wall. How can you, we assume water is a fixed quantity in the world like oil or gas. And then the general tendency in the world is saying that, well, we have a fixed quantity of water. The population now is 6.5 billion. By year 2050, it will go up to 9.5 billion. So the amount of water you have will go down significantly because the population per capita, because the population has gone up. Well, this is a fallacy. In the oil, gas, you can say because non-renewable resource. But in the area of water, the water is a renewable resource. And if we improve our management practices, we can increase it further. So we are not talking of a fixed stock of resource with a fixed stock of people saying this is so much water available. So in the world, in the future, we are going to see increasing emphasis on reuse and recycling. And sadly, we have no idea at all, even for United States, Canada, or Japan, what is the extent of our reuse of water. We have some rough ideas, but for the rest of the developing countries, Asia, we haven't a clue. So physical scarcity, I don't see a problem in the future. If we manage it properly, we can solve it. One of the problem has been, today we listened a lot, and we listen in the international field a lot. The world jumps on bandwagons, and we have bandwagons after bandwagons. It is very interesting to see how the bandwagons in the water field change with time. If 10 years ago you were in Stockholm, 10 years ago, every 1 hour, no matter which workshop you go or the plenary session you go, every 1 hour you would have heard 50 times the word sustainable development. If you do not do sustainable development, you are dead. Lo and behold, last year suddenly hit my head that the entire 4 days, not even one person talked about sustainable development. And the new buzzwords for the last 4 or 5 years has been integrated water resources management. If you integrate it, all your problems will be solved. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to tell my colleagues this concept in one form or another has been around for 70 years. So I have no doubt to say all this talk, I know the international agencies are extending IWRM. Again, we are focusing on the means, not the end. We're saying that if you do IWRM, your problems will be solved. I'm saying not only your problems will be solved, but 10 years from today, you'll be jumping on another bandwagon. And I'm willing to predict, not even 10 years, 5 years from today, the new bandwagon, IWRM will disappear. The new bandwagon will be governance. You get your governance right, everything will be solved. Well, we are jumping from one bandwagon to another. And I'm saying in the water field, if we have to solve our problem, go back to the basics. What are you trying to achieve? And if your idea is to do poverty alleviation, then see how do you use water development as a catalyst so do you alleviate the poverty. We have the knowledge, we have the technology, and in most cases, it should be possible to find the resources.
And I'd like to turn to our other guests now and ask them to what extent do they see the conditions articulated by Professor Biswas in your own spheres, in your own experiences in your country. Let me start with Ms. Witular.
Thank you, Chief. I think that is the difference from what we have been, from how we have been doing water so far. We have been doing water as a sector, yeah, which is not taking in consideration the networking or collaboration or participation of not just other stakeholders, but also with environment. So there is a problem of too much water, too little water, and too dirty water. And it's always the poor farmers, the poor fisher folks, and the women, especially in those target groups that are suffering most. And so in all solutions, we need to keep this as a checklist. How is it influencing environment, and how can environment solution also be poverty solution or gender solution?
Mr. Lee, do you see the issue of water resources in China in an integrated way, linking the issue with other spheres, environment, health, and so on?
All the water problem we are facing, water shortage, flood, and environmental degradation, is all actually, one side is caused by natural conditions. One side is caused by the human activities. Like in China, we have a old idiom says, the earth originally is peace and no problems. The problem is only created by the peoples. That means during the stage of development, we have less attention put on the environment, put on the ecological system protection. So we create some problem. So I saw more important issue is we have to change our economic development patterns, to change our development policies, and to change our behaviors of development. So the key story is put the water sector together with the whole economic human activity systems.
Mr. Mamon, please share with us your experience in Pakistan, how you're addressing the issues concerning water resources.
The real problem is the quality of water. If we address the quality of water, and we face the same problem in our country, these are the major issues which should be addressed. He is right on the target when he says that there is no scarcity in water. But in addition to that, I would request Professor Biswas to discuss yet another issue, and that is the equitable distribution of available water for agriculture and domestic consumption. Right? I pointed out earlier that there is water available, but there are certain sections of population, certain communities which do not get their right share of water. Yet another issue besides the water quality is the receding glaciers, particularly in the major basins, and the sheet runoff after the rains, and the water flowing into the oceans. If we don't address, and in that context, science can help us a lot. How to arrest the global warming, and how to stop the sheet runoff of water which is not being used. We should address the water conservation issues also. These are the major issues on which Dr. Biswas can further elaborate. Thank you.
Before we let Professor Biswas respond to that, I would like to turn to Mr. Arends from the Asian Development Bank. What are your current data on water resources in the region, and how is ADB able to assist the states, the countries in the region to get their particular problems of water resources addressed?
Today we talk about water as a resource. Actually, water is both a resource as well as a service, and the governance of the two is quite different. So, in fact, perhaps over the past decades, water management as a resource, typically in the context of river basins, hasn't really receive the attention it should. And that's why I think we see the results of fragmented management in the Asia-Pacific region today. At ADB, we have committed to step up our program of investments, loans, and technical assistance to help address some of these problems. And I'd like to just share three perspectives on that. I fully agree with Professor Biswas that the changes that are already taking place and will be taking place further are more challenging and also very rapid. So when it comes to our perspective on this, we see that river basin management, water resources management needs much more investment, but it all starts with mindsets, and it starts with people collaborating and addressing the challenges in a different way than we have done, perhaps over the past history, quite a long time. Most countries in the Asia-Pacific region have decentralized, which means that many responsibilities have now been given to local governments. So it's not just anymore the central government or the central ministry that says how things should be done, but it's actually local governments and also civil society organizations who are deeply involved. So when we talk about the capacity in a country to address these problems, it is actually a capacity that is shared and it has to learn to network and together find solutions. The second point, of course, is about money. To address many of the problems will involve much more investments. But again, these are investments from all sides, from central government, from local governments, from local communities, from private sector, individual citizens. And again, that picture has become more complex. And to streamline that, to make sure that the funds become available at various levels is a challenge. Finally, again, coming back to the issue of people at the center, I would talk about accountability. Good basin management, good water resources management, caring for our rivers is an issue of everybody. It's everybody's business. We believe that with good leadership from the government, but also from the other sectors, that will be in fact very possible. And we are there to assist the countries in the region with programs to help these become a reality.
If the issues are so serious and critical, why are many governments taking too long to respond? Shouldn't this be automatically part of the top agenda, in as much as the picture that you painted is so puts water resources issues as very, very significant indeed?
The answer is actually quite simple. If you look at it on all the governments, they give perhaps a little more emphasis on one sector than another, but they're as good or as competent or as bad or as incompetent, whether it's the water sector or the energy sector or the transportation sector. We should not, there's a tendency in the water sector to believe somehow we can make the water sector as a unique beacon in the midst of inefficiencies everywhere. That simply doesn't work. So if a country doesn't manage water properly, I'm almost certain it doesn't manage the electricity properly, or the health services properly, or the education properly.
If water issue is not the beacon, what is?
All of them, this is the one issue is, all of them are important. We cannot make a normative judgment, water is the most important. Depends where you sit. In some other country, they might say education is the most important issue, or health is the most important issue. All of them are actually a value judgment. So you really cannot say water is important for survival, so is energy, so is education, so is health, so is employment, so is housing. So a whole variety of issues, and there's a demand from each sector. So each sector has its advocates. So it's a question of compromise, and so the politicians deal with the trade of compromise. And so I do not believe any of these issues we can say that they should be at the top of the sector. They'll be in a high priority, but we cannot say at the top of the sector.
Let me fine-tune my question then and turn to our other guests. How can we make national leaders, decision makers, policy makers, consider water as a priority issue, maybe not the top on the agenda, but a priority issue that needs to be answered at the soonest possible time.
In fact, sensitizing the leadership requires a very strong advocacy, and that can be done by the media, by the international agencies, by the NGOs, by seminars, symposia. All these vehicles can be employed to sensitize the entire society, and in this process, the leadership can be sensitized. Advocacy, strong advocacy can be a very strong vehicle for that.
Let me add to that. I agree with all of those. And finally, of course, it's the ministers of finance who hold the purse strings for government's investments. And I think what the water community has to do is make a more, or put together a more compelling case why that is so important. That if water investments made, most of the MDGs will be reached much faster. However, if water investments are postponed, probably GDPs will suffer on account of a number of reasons. One of them being the pollution in rivers that continues. The people are not healthy. So the plus case of investing in water, how much money is actually, how much the government will save. There are figures on this, but this analysis has not been done country by country. I think when that is done and put in front of the cabinet, I think there's a very strong case to put water very high on the agenda.
I think we need to learn from the big, the overwhelming presence of climate change in the media now. Yeah, so if we learn from that, so what's the inconvenient truth about water? Yeah? That leaders need to realize that, because for decision makers, water is so easy. They can use as much as they want to when they're taking bath or at home or whatever. Yeah, and it's not that often that media shows the disparity of access to water.
The water profession is at fault. If we want to get the message to the policymakers and the decision makers, and the finance minister, and the planning minister, and the prime minister, as Water correctly said, we have to have facts. Can I go to the minister of finance in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, anywhere, tell him, if you don't do this development, and because of water quality, your GDP this year will be 5% less or 6% less. We don't have that type of information. So you also need this type of information in order to vote to sensitize the planning minister, finance minister. They said, yes, water is important, but the moment you leave the door, they've forgotten, they've gone to the next issue.
But for now, let me thank our guests, Mr. Lee, Mr. Witular, Mr. Arens, Mr. Mamon, and of course Professor Biswas for sharing their thoughts with us in this forum. And we thank our audience as well for being here. We covered a lot of ground, but the issue remains. We have to work harder, I guess, to send more compelling messages out there so that national governments will take notice, act, and act fast. This is Chichi Robles, thanking you for joining us. Good day.